This is the EDTC 615 final project on data-driven decision-making by Caitlin Cavanaugh. To begin, Daniel Venables stated in his book, How Teachers Can Turn Data into Action, that we need to identify problems and make sense of what is present in the data. And that's the purpose behind the data action model. That's why we need to pursue using this model in our schools. So what is the data action model? According to Venables, it occurs in 3 phases. The first involves gathering and reviewing data. The second is identifying learning and instructional gaps. And then finally, all of this leads to strategies and evaluation of effectiveness. Did our plan work? So in order to implement the data action model in our school, there will be some expectations. The first is that each grade level team will participate by working together to analyze their grade level data. There will be a requirement of 5 one-hour-long data meetings with each team to allow for the breakdown of data into smaller, more manageable chunks. When teams do this, they will be able to engage in meaningful conversations with deeper analysis. And then finally, all of this will occur over the course of 1 full grading quarter or 9 weeks. This will allow for the full analysis, implementation, and evaluation. So when we begin the data action model, we start at our very first meeting, which involves gathering and reviewing data. This requires the use of Excel spreadsheets to visually depict our data. When we have data in front of us, as teams, we will be able to use the Notice and Wonder protocol, which has us analyzing just the facts and then asking questions and looking for patterns. So for example, when I look at this spreadsheet, the first thing I notice is the amount of red scores and how the scores are getting progressively worse from objective 1 to 2 to 3. So that's something I'm wondering about. This leads to generating the exploratory questions. You create this question to help answer several of the wonder statements. Based on the data I just showed you, my exploratory question was, how are we currently differentiating and scaffolding our multiplication lessons to meet the needs of all learners, particularly those with IEPs? From there, we now go into our second data meeting, which is called triangulating the data. And this is where we take that exploratory question and we find other types of artifacts that we can bring to the table to help us answer that question. Things such as lesson plans or teacher planning calendars, extra quizzes, classwork assignments, IEPs, attendance data. And we need to put all of this together and interpret whether they are instructional gaps or are they learning gaps. As you can see from my artifacts, most of mine led to instructional gaps, which means things that I need to do to improve my teaching. From there, we move on to data meeting 3. This is where we specifically determine those gaps and goals. We want to go through and take all of those learning gaps and the instructional gaps that we identified from our various artifacts, and we want to rank them based on importance. Which one of these instructional gaps or learning gaps has the largest impact on the most amount of students? And those are the ones that we want to focus on. From there, we are able to set a specific measurable learning goal. What do we want students to achieve at the end of this process? What I wanted from my students and our team agreed upon was that by the end of the multiplication unit, at least 70% of students will be able to depict multiplication word problems using arrays with at least 80% accuracy on 3 out of 4 assessments. So we are expecting to see a large improvement from our instructional changes. When we move into data meeting 4, this is where we want to plan for the action. What are we going to do to change instruction so that we are able to meet our SMART goal and make these improvements with our students? So some of the things that we did were increase manipulatives. Perhaps we need to incorporate more technology, make sure our students are more highly engaged. We want the most impact that we can get from our changes in instruction. By the end of all of this, we've gone through 9 weeks, this entire process. We've implemented our instructional changes and strategies. We finally get to sit down at the end and evaluate the new data. We will create our new Excel spreadsheet. We will look at the numbers and discuss, did we meet our goal and were the instructional strategies effective? If so, let's take those positive instructional strategies and let's put them into future learning because they were effective in improving scores now. While there are a few concerns with implementing the data action model in our school, such as being able to have the consistent meeting times for 5 one-hour-long data meetings, the fact that we have to do this process over the course of 9 weeks, we need the professional learning community resources so that we can research different instructional tactics to use. Technology and the ability to use technology is a must with this process, as well as the flexibility. Are we able to change and adapt our instruction as we need to? But if we can get all of our teachers to buy into this process, there are so many benefits of this data action model. The process provides a true in-depth analysis of data and planning for effective instructional changes. When we step back and use the Notice and Wonder protocol, we're really able to examine the facts in a set of data without any preconceived notions. When we break it down and we have different exploratory questions, then we're able to actually lead ourselves to measurable goals, what we can achieve in the end. Examining multiple artifacts helps us to discern underlying gaps in instruction and learning. And then when we identify them, the instructional changes can be implemented in the future to address gaps and improve learning across the board. And finally, all of this encourages a collaboration and sharing of resources to benefit all students. So all in all, the process is highly effective, it's productive, and I really encourage it for our school.